Hello and welcome to This Really Happened, a place where unbelievable, heart-touching true stories come to life. Sometimes surprising, sometimes bittersweet, always real. Grab a drink and settle in. We're about to begin. Matthew and Sarah's silver wedding anniversary fell in the middle of the week. There was a restaurant, gifts, a sea of flowers, and, of course, guests. Initially, they planned to gather only the closest family, but the list subtly grew to nearly 30 people. Sarah, twirling before the mirror in a new, elegant dress, caught her reflection. She looked wonderful. You could barely give her more than 35. Youthful, slender, with impeccable taste in clothes and the ability to carry herself, a real find for a successful businessman and loving husband. It wasn't a big deal that Matthew, absorbed in work, had long stopped going to the gym and pool with her. He'd put on a little weight, become more leisurely in his movements and speech. But for her, he remained the same sweet, dear, one and only love. However important he seemed, he disappeared at his job for days on end. Sarah had already forgotten the last time they had dinner in a restaurant or went to the theatre for a premiere. Her husband always joked, "Money is business, and idle time, Sally, flew out the window long ago. When do I have time for leisure? You go have fun for me, my friend, at the bar, show off your outfit in the theatre foyer. A full stomach doesn't understand a hungry one. You're a free spirit, and I'm a man bound by my schedule." His life was entirely dedicated to work. Sarah lived by two passions, drawing and flowers. Design comes in many forms, but her work, whether on paper or in the ground, always celebrated flowering plants. That's why she often worked in tandem with her friend Ellie. Eleanor was passionate about creating beauty in country spaces using stone and wood. Sarah added tenderness, transforming bridges, gazebos, fountains, and arches into exotic flower beds. She had an amazing gift for uniting seemingly completely incompatible things. She affectionately teased her husband, "My tin woodman, my blacksmith, my steel knight." These nicknames were tied to his work. He was involved in the primary processing of metals. In her mind, he turned glowing liquid mass into rough ingots, which then served as raw material for machine building. She never delved into these industrial wilds. Her father had also been a metallurgist in his time, and then, in a way she didn't understand, he headed a metallurgical company. Well, that was fine. Why should she bother her head with all that? Even her mother, unable to bear it, divorced Sarah's father and moved away with a new husband to the ends of the earth. The daughter took after her with her pull towards creativity. Her mother wrote poetry, and here was the Urals, the mistress of the Copper Mountain ore. Technology and lyricism just didn't fit together. She had to run while such an elevated poet was calling her away. But a teenage girl with such a sledgehammer of a father certainly wouldn't be lost. She'd grow into an independent person. Theoretically, Sarah's father had almost no time for raising his daughter. But he loved his Annie selflessly, devotedly, and passionately. He cast aside all other women. All attempts to create a new family failed. Only two people were family, him and Sarah. Every free moment he dedicated only to her. And he laid his heart and soul at her feet from the moment this fragile creature came into the world. He swaddled her, bathed her, played with her, revepped in her sweet scent. That's why his wife quite rightly decided that Sarah would be better off with her dad. He raised his daughter, didn't break down, and didn't even hold a grudge against his ex-wife. He was glad she showed her true nature not in old age, when the in sickness and in health principle is tested, but revealed it earlier. Life went on. Anastasia was always curious. Could it be that her father, such a prominent and attractive man, really didn't date anyone, didn't have affairs? Despite the fact that they were true friends, could talk about anything, and trusted each other, this topic seemed forbidden to her. There were never any external signs that he had relationships elsewhere. If you were to describe Sarah's life before marriage in one word, the most suitable would be prosperous, fulfilling, interesting, heartfelt. The girl never felt deprived because she grew up in a single-parent family without an older female relative nearby. Her father was everything to her, her universe. Encouraging her passion for drawing, when she grew up, he bought a country plot where his daughter could freely experiment with lawns, flower beds, and flowers. Let her amuse herself. For a woman it's a quite beautiful and not foolish pursuit, he thought. Seeing that Anastasia wasn't going to abandon her hobby, her father sent her to study at the National Institute of Design. Before that, he sat her down with his best specialists at the computer, making her master special software for design projects. This skill not only helped Sarah in her studies, but paradoxically also got her married. And that's no joke, that's exactly how it happened. In the beginning, Sarah was just settling in. She and her father hadn't yet rented her an apartment, and for a while she lived in the institute dormitory. She handled computer issues at an internet cafe a couple of blocks from the dorm. She'd come in, get a large cup of cappuccino, a plate of oatmeal cookies, and dive headfirst into her latest idea, arranging different types of still inanimate flowers across the territory of a hypothetical object. Several dormitories were located nearby, including the Polytechnic University. The crowd in the cafe was mixed, mostly young people. That's how the future designer, passionate about flowering vegetation, and the future metallurgist, with a passion for ores and alloys, met. The girl felt something kindred in him, like in her beloved father. It was a fateful encounter. Everything developed so quickly between them, and it immediately became clear that both were very serious about the relationship. For the long summer holidays, they went to Sarah's hometown, where her father organized a tour of the metallurgical plant for his daughter's friend. The young man's eyes shone so brightly. No entertainment or romance could compare to his passion. While the guest was showering, father and daughter talked for a bit. "It seemed to me that your friend isn't shallow. He'll turn out to be a capable professional in our field over time," the man said. "Dad, he's just as serious about me as he is about his, maybe even our shared future. I'm pregnant. We've been living with Matthew in my apartment for the last 2 months. He doesn't know this news yet. It was important to me what you would say." "What can I say, daughter? I wouldn't want my grandson or granddaughter to grow up in a single-parent family like you did. You shouldn't delay talking to Matthew. The fact that you're both only 19 is even good. You'll still be quite young when your child is on their feet. You'll have time to be by their side and live for yourselves when they grow up. And now I'll help you both financially and morally. I'll support you in Moscow so you can both continue your studies. I'll hire household help for you, a nanny for the baby and a housekeeper. Just don't do anything foolish. Don't even think about postponing having the child. It's risky for your health and will be too serious a test for your relationship." Matthew was over the moon with happiness when he learned his beloved was expecting. Destinies and love stories are different for everyone. For Sarah and Matthew, everything was so smooth, cozy, and heartfelt from the very beginning that you could include them in a textbook of family idols. Everything worked out wonderfully for them. They've been together for 25 years, and they themselves are only 45. You could hardly wish for more. They managed to walk hand in hand through such a varied, colourful but very happy life, raising 2 sons almost to adulthood. People usually say about such couples, they are 2 halves of one whole. When guests at the silver wedding raise their glasses to their family, they won't be insincere in their praises. Anastasia twirled a little more in front of the mirror, smiled at herself. Beautiful, unadorned, beautiful. And her Matty is just what she needs. She grew sad. How sad that her father hadn't lived to see this momentous date. He would have been so happy for her and Matthew, for their sons. The boys, however, aren't in a hurry to get married yet. They offer arguments in their defence. Mum, Dad, we haven't met our halves yet. You know, where everything is as perfect as yours, without any catches. Just don't start grumbling that you won't live to see grandchildren that way. Everything in its own time, youngsters. After graduating from university, Matthew and Sarah didn't stay in Moscow. Why would they need that capital city hustle? The young woman's father was glad to get a professional assistant in the company. For a couple of years, he watched how Matthew handled tasks and then immediately made him his deputy. He built a house for his son-in-law, daughter, and their 2 sons. The boys were born a year apart. Their parents decided that since heaven was sending them a second child at such a young age, then so be it. Sarah's father started getting sick not long ago, but immediately, severely and sharply. An examination revealed diabetes. This meant a different regime, a different rhythm of life. No indulgences with sweets and fatty foods. A strict diet, constant blood sugar monitoring. Sarah couldn't believe her eyes and ears. Her sensible, competent, educated father turned into a stubborn boy when dealing with doctors. No authorities, no discipline, no obedience, no injections on time. He did whatever he wanted, as if the illness had taken away his reason. As if in punishment for all these protests, the illness clung to him with a death grip. After another trick with insulin, which her father, due to personal negligence, didn't inject on time, he fell into a diabetic coma. He was alone at home. By the time Sarah rushed over to find out why he wasn't answering calls, the time was tragically lost. Neither money, nor Matthew's connections in medical circles, nor Sarah's frantic running around doctors could save the head of the metallurgical company. Vital bodily functions could not be restored. The moment her father passed away, the woman felt her life had ended, but her Matthew was by her side, her hope, her support, her stone wall. She survived, learned to smile and enjoy life again. Now they stood with her friend Ellie in the ladies' room of the restaurant where they had come for the silver wedding anniversary. Ellie joked, "Sally, everyone else here is normal, only we 2 are so beautiful. You look stunning in that dress. The turquoise goes amazingly with your brown eyes. Who would have thought that was a possible combination? And that little dumpling Veronica with the pink suit really overdid it. The fabric is great, the base is good, but in that suit, she looks like a pig." The 2 women were finally powdered and made up. "Yes, I witnessed a strange little scene from some incomprehensible play," Ellie began. The banquet had been going on for a couple of hours, just when the first big smoke break was announced. Yours immediately darted off to the side, into a niche, while everyone was leaving the table. My bag was nearby, on the windowsill. I reached for my lipstick and involuntarily overheard a snippet. "With you. You know the reason." At that moment his gaze fell on me. He stopped mid-sentence and finished in a business-like tone. "We'll sort out all the document issues with you tomorrow. I need to go." Eleanor paused for a second, then added, "Somehow, this strange dialogue really smells of an affair on the side, Sally, or am I a 2-humped camel?" She laughed theatrically, but it was clear the conversation wasn't easy for her. Finally she added, "Anyway, we're all under the influence of wine fumes right now. Take a closer look at your beloved, Sarah. Maybe my story is just a figment of my sick imagination, a woman who stopped believing in great and bright love long ago. After 3 divorces, I stopped being an optimist in that area." This didn't pass without consequence for Sarah. She became wary, turning into one sharp gaze and keen ear. Before, she and Matthew had always trusted each other unconditionally, carefully respecting each other's personal space. It never occurred to them to rummage through their partner's phone, peek into their computer, or even the car's glove compartment. It was a taboo they hadn't even agreed upon. The rule formed itself and worked flawlessly. Nonsense, she imagined it all, Sarah thought. Matthew didn't say the word baby, my friend misheard. He never used diminutive pet names like sweetheart, honey, kitten at home. He lovingly called her my Sallybug. It wasn't that they were against funny pookums or cute bunnies. It just somehow didn't stick between them from the beginning. At home, Matthew behaved impeccably. If he was just playing the role of a model husband while not actually being one, he would surely have received an Uncle Oscar statuette from the Hollywood Film Academy. After the noisy anniversary party, he fully returned to work. He'd come home late at night, but he'd had that schedule for the last 10 years. Could he have been cheating all that time and leading her on? He would have definitely slipped up on something, but here everything was as it always was, nothing to find fault with. She thought about how the plants would behave after planting, about the fact that seeds of doubt were also actively sprouting. Sarah hadn't even guessed until now. The worm of doubt didn't wriggle in manure, it tormented her. She fought with herself, asking her patience, "Will I dare to look through my husband's phone, or is it better not to open this Pandora's box?" Her intuition was silent, unwilling to answer her questions. After several days, when the contradictions completely tore her soul apart, the woman could no longer bear this torment. Late at night, she pulled his phone from under his pillow and locked herself in the bathroom with it. Whatever happens, happens. Even if he wakes up, what's meant to be will be. Matthew's contact list was extensive. Sarah scrolled through it, examining the names and faces on the avatars. She knew almost all these people well, or at least casually, except for someone's initials, LVN, instead of an image in the small window, and a photo of an orchid. Sarah was a top-class specialist in her field and would never have mistaken this flower for anything else. She pressed the call button mechanically. At that moment, not even a dozen strong men could have restrained the impulse of her eager fingers. Her nerves were at their limit. The breaking point in the war with the unknown was reached. A ringing, very girlish voice unexpectedly answered the call at 3 a.m. "Kitten, missed me. I'm still awake, imagine, watching a romance series. What about your old lady? Is she not home right now, and you decided to call me?" Sarah sank onto the cold bathroom tile floor. This blow was below the belt. Old lady, that must be her, and Kitten, her husband Matthew. She hadn't noticed anything, but the family boat, it turned out, had already developed a deep crack. On one side, this crack was lubricated by her naivety, her belief in the nobility of the world. On the other, by trust in the closest person. She surveyed the spacious room. Black spots swam before her eyes. A minute ago, her reliable universe had collapsed. There was no need now to keep a straight face in front of anyone, a face wet with tears trying to wash away the traces of bitter betrayal. Nothing would ever be the same. There was no longer an ideal family, just having celebrated their silver anniversary. How painful, unbearable. Anastasia stumbled into the bedroom where her chosen one, her beloved man, was still sleeping peacefully, not yet knowing that his life had just taken a sharp turn. His wife was the kind of person who, loving with all her heart, would never forgive infidelity. How many suitors had tried to woo her during 25 years of marriage? She brushed off all such attempts sharply, ironically explaining, "You know I'm married to the most wonderful man in the world. Could it really have occurred to you that I would trade him for any of you? That's a utopia." She lay down next to her husband with great difficulty. The resentment was endless, the wound bleeding too much. At that moment, he was repulsive to her. The thought persistently buzzed in her head. I wonder whose idea it was to call me old lady. Did Matthew come up with it, or his paramour? Ah, what did it matter? She didn't know how old the owner of that ringing voice was. Her husband surely hadn't found this clearly young treasure in a kindergarten. Sarah remembered how at Ellie's birthday party she had introduced them to Matthew with her latest young lover. How indignant her husband was on the way home afterward. "No, Sarah, please explain to me. A big age difference between a man and a woman, that's a catastrophe. What is there to talk about? How do you spend leisure time together?" Anastasia had spent a long time calming her agitated husband then. And now? It turned out all his assurances were false. The axiom she had once encountered in a film, never say never. How can we know how we will behave in a given situation? So why make vows in advance? Confusion, fragments of thoughts and memories. Sarah felt she was slowly going mad from this insane whirlwind of internal deliberations. She moved even further away from Matthew. Although she loved waking up in his arms, she used to scold him, "Bear, you're going to break me in half some day." But the hugs, apparently, did her good. "My signature pies. Look, Matty, soon you won't be able to fit through the doorway." And he would smile back, full and content, pull her towards him again, bury his nose in her shoulder and growl, "How I love the smell of your herbal shampoo, patroness of Flora. Or do you mix some potion into it so I'm always enchanted by you?" This little scene between them had happened quite recently, on Wednesday morning, the day of their silver anniversary. It turned out her cheating Kitten had been lying. He wanted her to remain happily ignorant. Why? What were his goals? Sarah had no answers to these questions. Veronica wrinkled her nose in displeasure. What were these night calls from Matthew? Maybe his wife had suddenly woken up and interrupted their talk. He had never bothered her so late before. He must really have missed her. Making herself a sausage sandwich, the young woman returned to the television. Her lover often scolded her for her disorderly lifestyle. She liked to sleep late during the day and stayed up at night. She'd roll her eyes languidly and argue for the umpteenth time. "But you yourself made me quit, saying my main role now is to be your girlfriend, your beloved woman. You take care of the other worries. And what kind of job is junior commander over senior janitors? That miserable housing office, those grumpy old pensioners constantly coming to find out why their utility bills are so high. The salary is peanuts, arguments and scandals all day long. I'm so happy my knight freed his lady love from this nightmare." She knew how to convince Matthew of anything. She was wonderfully beautiful, young and fresh, never in a bad mood, overflowing with ideas. Next to her, he felt like something amazing. His wife didn't compare at all. Matthew was dying of passion. Next to her, he was ready for anything, especially when she would suddenly start looking at him with an appraising gaze and then deliver her verdict. "My God, how handsome you are. Would anyone say you're already 45? I wouldn't give you more than 30. "You're very youthful, my love. It's like a miracle. We've been together for 2 years, and you get handsomer every day. I respect you so much, Kitten. Come here quickly. I've missed you so much." Matthew didn't walk to her. He flew. It didn't matter that he was a whole 25 years older than this little thing. She couldn't be deceiving him so skillfully for so long. She was truly in love, and her feelings only grew stronger with each meeting. Surely he, who had been commanding a huge team for a couple of decades, knew how to read people. They met by chance, on a bus. The man had forgotten the last time he'd used public transport, but then a snag. It was time to change winter tires for summer ones. The guys at the car service had bent something, overbent it, twisted the head of an important tool. The skilled mechanics advised against taking a taxi. It was only a couple of minutes' walk to the bus stop through the spring town. No inconvenience, pure pleasure. Later, Matthew often thought that on the day he first met Veronica, the stars had aligned magically in the sky, facilitating it in every way, that it was a sign that Veronica was his woman. He absolutely didn't want to think that he had been mistaken before. His whole life with his wife now seemed like a rehearsal before the real love of his life. Veronica, on the bus that day, smiled condescendingly and gave up her seat to a very old lady. She moved to the back platform, where Matthew stood with his business briefcase in his right hand. The girl was not unintelligent in worldly matters, and immediately understood that this expensively dressed man felt like a fish out of water on the bus. When a couple soon vacated 2 seats on the back row, she decided to help the gentleman adapt to the unfamiliar environment and invited him to take a seat next to her. They started talking on this basis. They still had a decent distance to travel to their destination. The young Timur-like helper to strangers captivated him with just a few phrases. "You're not very comfortable on this bus, are you? It's written all over your face that you deserve only a comfortable seat in a luxury car." "And what else is written on my face, young lady?" Matthew laughed at her compliment. "The age difference between us isn't that big," the girl countered. "You look 30 at most, and I just turned 18. We could almost be considered people of the same generation." Matthew wasn't exactly an idiot, but this thinly veiled lie struck his male heart dead. Twilight had completely fallen outside the bus windows when his seatmate on the back row got ready to get off. He asked to walk her to her dormitory. Veronica was learning the intricacies of working in housing and communal services at a training centre. The man had never cheated on his wife before, but now it was as if a devil had possessed him. Everything was new, unexplored. Veronica twisted him around her little finger, and he revelled in it. The girl was already cunning and experienced. She hadn't just been through the hands of young boys. And here was a whole adult man, ready to walk around her on his hind legs, a loyal trained poodle. An expensive car, elegant clothes, delicious perfume, expensive accessories, all were at her service. A month later, he rented Veronica a lovely apartment in a new building on the outskirts. She refused a car. She was too lazy to learn traffic rules and get a license. Matthew visited his princess often, every other day. All the remaining time she spent idly, watching series, flipping through music channels, going to the sea with a girlfriend. Matthew didn't dare to run off with his mistress to Turkey or Greece. What was funny was that the young lady didn't much care for high society. So the fact that she and her lover didn't go to restaurants together, didn't go to resorts, and weren't seen anywhere in public didn't bother her at all. She was the type of woman who turns into a homebody over the years, well-fed, cosy, and that was all. She didn't need further progress or development. As the yard cat in the cartoon about Kesha said, "We're well fed here too." So for almost 2 years, Veronica lived like a pampered pet and was happy with everything. But, as is often the case, life always throws in some suddenly. It happened this time too. Her mother came to visit her and immediately began to teach her daughter about life. You say they've been married for almost 25 years and have sons. So maybe you should switch to a younger man. Why do you need this daddy lover? Mum, what are you saying? Matthew is so sweet and obedient too. He fulfills all my wishes. I even carve out money for you to help. His sons are still unfeathered chicks. I've always liked older men. Her mother laughed. Next you'll say you love him madly. Veronica thought for a moment. I don't love him, but I'm not against him. I could live with him for a long time and have no worries. Hearing this conclusion, her mother immediately summarized, Well then, get to work. Separate him from his wife forever. You want to dip your little hand into his family's feeding trough, don't you? So act, Veronica. To be completely honest, she was a little ashamed of her mother with her village values and the airs of an unrecognized queen of sunflowers. In the countryside, she constantly lectured everyone. Coming to visit her daughter in the city, she didn't drop this habit, but listening to her was sometimes worthwhile. It was from her that Veronica, lacking personal experience, absorbed the basics of strategy and tactics. So far, her implementations in everyday life hadn't failed. After seeing her mother off, Veronica seriously thought for the first time. Her mother was right. The lover didn't skimp on financial help, that was a fact. The fact that he wasn't constantly around, she actually liked. Who knew how they would get along living together? But she was only 20, and nothing bothered her. In 5 years, without a pretty stamp in her passport, it wouldn't be so fun. Again, she, Veronica, loved children very much, saw her future definitely in the company of a couple of cute toddlers who would toddle around and look at her like a goddess. She considered a family without children incomplete. And Matthew's time was running out. He still had to raise their children. So no matter how you looked at it, it was time to change the balance of power. Matthew's children didn't count yet. She had to catch her unfortunate lover in a net, replace the fishing rod with a love hook with a reliable official network. She started talking to the man about this the very next day. His reaction stunned her. He unconditionally agreed to leave his wife. He assured her that his share of the jointly acquired property would be quite enough for them to live comfortably with his paradise bird, his bullet, his beloved girl. Veronica pouted indignantly and began to whine that he could try harder for her, come up with something clever so that their income after the divorce would be substantial. Had he really worked his back off at the company for so many years for nothing? What else could be skimmed off here? That day, Matthew returned home somewhat confused. He still didn't doubt for a moment that Veronica was the woman of his life, his prize and male luck. But he had never pocketed anything before. Veronica insisted they skim the company's finances for their own good. By morning, a relatively simple plan for siphoning money from the company was devised. The company's executive director was ready to implement it to secure happiness for his beloved. Time began to tick. By morning, after an almost sleepless night in the same bed with Matthew, Sarah made a decision. Follow her husband after work, find out where his mistress lived, observe them from a distance, and only then start confronting her husband. The morning went exactly the same as any other. Matthew sleepily said hello, grabbed his phone, and disappeared with it into the bathroom. Before, she wouldn't have paid any attention to such behavior. Now, in all his actions, she sensed a double meaning. Her plans to postpone the confrontation with her husband for another time failed miserably. Matthew appeared in their bedroom just a couple of minutes later. He was furious. "Sarah, I don't understand. Did you take my phone last night and look through it?" She had no moral strength to enter the now inevitable conflict, but she knew how to take a hit. "Yes, I did. Moreover, I called one of the numbers on the contact list. It's listed as LVN. Would you care to decipher that abbreviation?" They almost never argued, outwardly living in perfect harmony. Both were now bewildered, both choosing their words carefully. Then Matthew decided, "Sarah, this had to happen sometime. You can't hide a secret forever. I fell in love with someone else. Wife, neither you nor I are to blame for this. I can't help it. My passion for her is stronger than me. It's hotter than anything we had. Believe me, I didn't want to hurt you." The woman was silent. What to answer? Argue? Shout? Beg him to stay with her and leave the other woman? It felt absurd. She didn't know what to say in response. There was such emptiness inside, as if her heart had been taken out and trampled before her eyes. Just yesterday, they were listening to beautiful toasts in their honour, and today the old lady and the kitten found themselves on opposite banks of the river called Life. Sarah cleared her throat. For some reason, she desperately wanted to ask this specific question. "Why does this girlfriend of yours call me old lady? Was that your idea?" "Sarah, she and I have a significant age difference, but that doesn't hinder true love." Anastasia raised her eyebrows in surprise. "Well, I'll be." Her husband was habitually sharing his news and feelings with her. This was the final chord in the requiem for the death of their family. Her patience ran out. A volcano raged inside, resentment and incomprehension brewed. Anyone else but not her and Matthew, she thought to herself. Even the pile of beautifully wrapped gifts lying on the table in the living room hadn't been unpacked yet. Silver boxes, bright ribbons, vases with her favourite flowers all over the house. How could she reconcile all these gifts with the bitter disappointment? How could she live on without her beloved man? Sarah tried to probe her heart with the misfortune, to settle a new reality within it. What did she feel towards Matthew now? She couldn't answer that question. What was happening seemed like a terrible dream. She would wake up now, and it would all be over. She had almost thought that this very minute, after Matthew left for work, she would indeed put on her nightgown, pull the blanket over her head, and sleep through this sleepless night. But the intercom at the gate rang. A young woman with a brightly made-up face appeared on the screen. When asked what she wanted, she briskly replied that her name was Veronica, and they needed to talk. Anastasia hadn't expected such a move from her husband's mistress. Pressing the button on the device, the model-like young woman rushed into the fight from the threshold. "Matty told me everything. You've had your talk. There's nothing more to hide. Why are you looking at me like that? Yes, it happens. Men leave their wives for their beloved women. It's natural." Sarah's mind immediately brought up the words, "He who betrays once will betray again." "And what does his old lady wife owe your visit? Do you want to tell me something, or have you appeared to dance on the coals left from our family bonfire?" Veronica sat down in an armchair without being invited, crossed her legs, and looked around. Then she finally stated, "I hope you understand that this is a divorce. Your sons are already grown. There won't be any special problems. We'll sort out the property, both the inheritance and your joint property. Matthew will inform you of all our terms later." Anastasia couldn't believe her ears. Some flirt, some squirt, some floozy was going to dictate the terms of her divorce from Matthew? Never. She wanted to get a rich, successful man. by all means, but first his wife would dot the I's and cross the T's. She practically led Veronica out by the ear. She had such a look that Veronica suddenly cooled her ardour and obediently shuffled on her high heels across the yard towards the exit. She only had enough strength to turn back and announce triumphantly, "This isn't goodbye, we'll see each other again at the divorce." Sarah filed for divorce that very day. The sons were long since adults, their presence certainly wouldn't cause issues, but the property turned out to be much more complicated. She trusted Matthew so much that she had never even read the documents he or her father brought her to sign. And they hadn't generated any catches. Everything bought and acquired was simply registered in her name and the head of the family's name. It was tacitly assumed that this was normal and correct. Seeing the whole picture, the woman clutched her head. She had never been a business person, and here everything somehow pointed towards accumulation. She hadn't delved into the details. There was so much in the papers that Anastasia soon realized she would have to seek help from her father's old friend, who had been his lawyer and loyal comrade all his life. Victor Davies met Anastasia as if he had known in advance that she would come to him for help with the divorce. "What, my dear girl, have you decided to break up with Matthew?" "It's true. A secret always comes out, no matter how long it's kept. Charlie, my dear friend, predicted that you wouldn't remain in ignorance about your husband's infidelity for long." Sarah stared in astonishment at the grey-haired man with a twinkle in his eye. The question burst out, "Dad knew Matthew had a mistress?" Victor Davies squinted. "At first, he only had suspicions. Your husband suddenly started disappearing instead of going to work, heading in unknown directions. Charlie assigned the security service to find out everything. On the day he passed, he had just received the investigation report with photos. He managed to give it to me, gave me some instructions that could secure your future. And with that report, which is still in my office, he felt unwell. He rushed home to lie down. I even walked him to the car. He was pale all over, his face covered in sweat, and it was quite a cool day. I didn't keep an eye on him, Sally. I should have gone with him, but I had another meeting scheduled, but I honestly carried out all his tasks. Now I'll show you all the documents." After a couple of minutes, the lawyer laid out several folders before her. She opened the first one and gasped. In it lay a document titled "Will with a Condition." The woman began to study it carefully. The papers contained nothing concerning the property she and Matthew had received and used after Anastasia's father's death. It concerned completely different things: a villa in the United Arab Emirates, a small house in Switzerland, 2 apartments in Moscow, a dacha on the Black Sea coast. The woman reread the clause which stated, "This will is to be announced only if his daughter decides to file for divorce. If such a precedent does not arise, all specified property is to be transferred to the 2 grandsons in equal shares, but after they enter into official marriages." A clause stating that all this would be acquired on his instructions by his lawyer was also present. "How complicated it all is," she voiced her opinion. "Why did Dad set all this up?" "Not complicated, but wise," Victor Davies stated firmly. "You always doted on your husband. Your union seemed so strong that even hints of small cracks were fantastical. A solid house, cars in the garage, the dacha full of your flower beds if you want fresh air. The boys also have a full set of everything for now: apartments, cars, money in accounts. Charlie always said about you that he couldn't understand how you could be so indifferent to money. You flit over your lawns like a carefree butterfly. To pull the wool over the eyes of someone like you is easy. only no one can understand that worldly goods truly mean nothing to you. You have a roof over your head and food on the table, family nearby. You are happy. You won't snatch a piece from anyone's throat. Will you be able to stand up for yourself financially? And will you even want to? Don't be offended. I did everything as he instructed. I presented these papers only when you truly decided to divorce Matthew. So you would have something like a spare oxygen tank for a diver or a substantial nest egg for a rainy day. Sarah, you should also order an accounting and auditing review at your father's company. The controlling stake belongs to you. Your husband only has 20% in the company. All these young mistresses, they are predators behaving like sharp-toothed sharks. Sensing prey, they try to get everything, along with the lover, into their greedy paws. After the divorce, it would be good to know the true state of affairs in the metallurgical enterprise under your beloved's supervision, and Matthew's. It's unlikely to go without a court case. It was already clear that Sarah's husband and his mistress would fight for every penny and every inch of land if it concerned real estate. As the French say, in war as in war. Anastasia was ready for any battle. She even stopped whining internally. Something within her had frozen forever into a piece of ice that could no longer be melted. If someone had told Matthew that for beautiful eyes he would undermine the company he had given over 20 years to from the inside and out, he would have spat in that person's face. But Veronica went wild. She wouldn't let him near her, wouldn't give sweet compliments if he reported that some process had stalled. He would never have reported to a woman before. But Veronica was his everything. Without her nearby, he breathed differently, didn't live, but only waited for the next meeting. He now found it difficult to lie in bed with Sarah. He was constantly afraid of calling her by another name. But it was too early to leave home. He had to placate his wife, celebrate the silver wedding, be a good little husband. On the day he started his schemes at work, he set a deadline for how long he would stay with his unloved wife and dream every second of his beloved girl. Veronica had nicknamed his Sarah the trying-to-look young old lady. After talking to his mistress, Matthew at work now did nothing but skillfully mock his subordinates from under the table. He introduced a system of fines for the slightest offence. He yelled at the easy-going ones, and they, unwilling to lose their bonuses, in turn tormented the lower staff. Recently, Matthew, walking through the foundry shops, even witnessed a characteristic scene. One of the steelworkers had done something slightly wrong, a trifle overall, just a delayed defect. The shop foreman, not mincing words, swore at him. The steelworker, wiping sweat from his brow, hissed through his teeth, "To hell with all of you! You've turned the plant into a charity ward. What is this? Now every gopher is an agronomist? Who's going to work, dear comrade bosses?" People were quitting the company in droves. The HR department was working its fingers to the bone, trying to retain the core of the firm on which everything else depended. Rumours spread through the city that everything at the enterprise was going downhill rapidly, and this was in addition to Matthew starting to withdraw money from his father-in-law's brainchild's accounts under plausible pretexts. He no longer knew what he was doing, couldn't stop. His ultimate goal was to maximally reduce the value of the metallurgical plant's shares so that he could later buy the controlling stake from Sarah for a pittance, or at least another 31% of the securities to his 20 that he already had. Matthew soberly understood that after the anticipated divorce, his share of the jointly acquired property wouldn't be that large. And he wasn't entirely a scoundrel. He wouldn't fail to share with his sons, whom he sincerely loved, wouldn't fail to secure their reliable future. What would remain for Veronica's greedy ambitions was almost nothing, dust. But owning the plant, deciding the fate of the profits derived from it, that was a different matter. He could quickly restore the damage he had inflicted on production and would again be at the helm of a major industry giant. Sarah, at that moment, still extremely far from the realities of metallurgy, was poring over another project. She sat at the computer for hours with Eleanor, meticulously arranging flowers and greenery next to her friend's stone installations. It didn't occur to her to be interested in her father's firm's affairs. It was enough that Matthew almost lived at work. She was a gentlewoman. It was better to ponder the composition of flowers and bushes. Then came the pleasant preparations for the silver anniversary, the fuss, the trips to shops and beauty salons. Did she think then that she was moving at 7-league strides towards the end of their happy marriage? No, of course not. After visiting the lawyer, Anastasia was again in turmoil. She connected her father's death and her husband's behaviour, which pushed her towards the breakup. She blamed her beloved man, linking him to her father's sudden demise. She scolded herself that with her creative impulses she wasn't observant, didn't notice the obvious. She didn't even immediately realize that she was drawing different varieties of orchids on sheets of paper and then cutting these drawings into pieces with manicure scissors. Only one thought constantly spun in her head. I will never use this type of flower in my design projects again. The exquisite orchid is capable of wounding the soul with its hidden meaning. The orchid went and took my husband away from me. It's all a lie that beauty saves the world. Warmth and sincerity save it. No one will be able to shake me on this. By the evening of the day, the family boat of Matthew and Sarah capsized. Both understood that they could not be under the same roof. Sarah wandered through the huge house, thinking that she wouldn't be able to live here after the divorce. It was too painful to look around. The collection of family photos in beautiful frames everywhere alone was enough. Her eyes kept falling on the pictures, as if on purpose. But she had no desire to smash or break them. They were a part of her sons. She would tell them about the upcoming changes, about the possible court hearing. Later, there was time. She feared a sharp reaction, condemnation from the children, who would label their father a scoundrel, and her, perhaps incompetent, unable to keep the man she loved by her side. She leafed through the pages of the past. Again, where was her mistake? A fatal coincidence, or was everything already fatally predetermined? Sarah thought of her father with warmth once again. How upset he would be now, knowing about the inevitability of her separation from her husband. He seemed to respect Matthew, or was he just pretending to please her? Sarah snapped to attention. Victor Davies had advised her to conduct an external audit of her father's company affairs, and she hadn't done anything in that direction yet. And she didn't have the necessary contacts in that field. She would have to turn to the ubiquitous Eleanor again, and at the same time tell her about the changes in her personal life. Her friend was probably already burning with impatience. Had Sarah managed to find out anything regarding Matthew's strange conversation at the banquet? She called Ellie. An hour later, they were drinking wine in the garden gazebo, discussing the perfidy of the empty-headed Veronica, her greed and insolence. Anastasia ordered the results of the audit at the metallurgical plant not to be announced for the time being. She already knew that Matthew had turned out to be a scoundrel. Yes, Ellie, as usual, had pulled some strings. A close friend helped organize the total audit. He worked in the relevant authorities, helped keep the case from going to court until the divorce hearing, which was already scheduled. This was within his possible competence. Sarah was as calm as a snake. She was well prepared for the meeting with her husband and the new love of his life. Lawyer Victor Davies hadn't been idle either. He had meticulously sorted through all the papers left by his friend. In the process, he smiled more than once. Oh, what a cunning fox my unforgettable Charlie was. He had drafted something 100 times, forms regarding property, the saga with the documents. He even slipped a prenuptial agreement to his son-in-law, and Sarah's signature was on it. He had to call her right away, find out if she was aware that in case of proven infidelity on her husband's part, he would lose all rights to all jointly acquired property. The lawyer thought again. Love in a cottage is paradise. Only the beloved would hardly agree to a cottage. Victor Davies was worried that the prenuptial agreement or the clause concerning infidelity might be deemed void by the judge. The husband would still get his seemingly legal half of the assets belonging to him and Sarah. In the phone conversation, Anastasia confidently confirmed that she was aware of the existence of the prenuptial agreement. When her father was preparing it with lawyers, she was so engrossed in a fascinating commission on the coast that she signed the document on the go without reading it, fully trusting her father and husband, who were present. Victor Davies was somewhat taken aback. So Matthew was also aware of the prenuptial agreement. What a strange family they were, he and Sarah. They signed documents with a flourish without looking, trusted each other up to a certain point, and then sacrificed everything on the altar of a new passion. Strange are your ways, love. You know how to deprive people of reason, casually, without much effort. Veronica stoically endured Matthew's presence in the apartment, and she had several reasons for this. Firstly, the divorce hearing was only a couple of weeks away. Secondly, the pregnancy test showed a positive result. She could be considered empty-headed as much as anyone liked. She didn't reach for the stars with her intellect or career, and in the opinion of advanced society, she was a somewhat primitive creature. But one thing certainly couldn't be taken away from her, a strong, honest, maternal instinct that came from who knows where. She was already lost in dreams that she and Matthew would marry, live in prosperity, and she would endure the rest. She had already learned to play at love. There were no failures. Before sleep, falling sweetly asleep on her almost husband's shoulder, she came up with how she would deliver the stunning news, sweetening the pill. "Kitten, what do you think I'm like a chipmunk?" He would start the game, offering hypotheses, knowing that anything could be expected from her imagination. She would deliver triumphantly. "Wrong guess. I'm like a chipmunk because I also have 2 stripes on my pregnancy test now. Darling, we're having a baby." She squeezed her eyes shut. She imagined Matthew carrying her in his arms, showering her with expensive gifts, buying a new special wardrobe for expectant mothers, providing a layette for the future baby only from the most elite stores. She would have to talk to him about kicking his wife out of their house. The complete family should move into these excellent chambers. It wasn't right for the baby to grow up in cramped conditions. Unsuspecting Matthew, on the contrary, prayed to heaven that Veronica wouldn't get pregnant. He was getting on in years. He could do without all these kinder surprises. He already had 2 sons. That was quite enough to satisfy his paternal feelings. They were so good together, he'd much rather continue to cherish and pamper her. The man had no doubt that the divorce case would end in his complete triumph. He knew that Anastasia was a decent, kind-hearted person, and would generously share all the wealth with him, even though he had essentially betrayed her. She must understand that love doesn't ask when to arrive. She also had the metallurgical plant. He just needed to tell Veronica to behave properly during the proceedings. Sarah sat in the courtroom, surveying the full room. Behind her, Eleanor kept offering support, whispering her impressions in her ear. Next to her friend sat her silent friend from the service, waiting for the moment he could give his subordinates the command to attack. Judging by Matthew's satisfied face, embracing Veronica's shoulders, he didn't expect any surprises from the divorce from his wife. Sarah decided any such hearing is a tedious business. Even if the judge studies all the materials beforehand, questions inevitably arise afterward. And so it was now. First, the court agenda was announced, then all involved parties present were introduced. Matthew even thought it was completely unclear why all this circus with some pomp was necessary. But then Victor Davies took the floor. He informed the court that during the preparation of the documents, a number of additional circumstances had come to light. He placed copies of the papers before the head of the judicial proceedings and requested permission to clarify certain points. He read everything to the judge, the public, and all curious persons, the prenuptial agreement, the will with special conditions and clauses. At the end of his speech, he added that there were further questions regarding Matthew from the competent authorities after a conducted secret accounting audit. At these words, the judge nodded understandingly. The ground gave way under Matthew's feet. After hearing everything, Veronica clutched his sleeve and whispered hotly, "I don't understand. We won't get anything. We'll be left with nothing. I'm pregnant, Matthew." Her lover looked at her with uncomprehending glassy eyes. While the court retired for deliberation on the divorce, Eleanor's friend sitting in the distance showed him a mocking toy, an ironic keychain in the shape of small handcuffs. Matthew understood the hint at first glance. He calmed down. He suddenly didn't care that after separating from Sarah he would be left with nothing, and his wife would become 100 times richer. He was clearly going to prison for a long time. It would be good if he wasn't arrested right there in the courtroom. Sarah had won, and he had suffered a complete fiasco everywhere. Sitting next to him, Veronica kept buzzing and buzzing, accusing him of all mortal sins. And he wondered, maybe this young woman had never loved him. She loved his money, yes. She was happy with gifts, that was a fact. Most likely, she flattered him, pursuing her goal. Matthew flinched. Had Veronica said something about pregnancy, or had he misheard? That was all he needed right now, to be left without money even for diapers. And would she wait for him for several years? He glanced at his princess, whose heart was admiring the manicure done yesterday especially for the court. Amazing, carefree attitude, and the habit of him taking care of everything. Had she already forgotten everything she had just heard? Did she think that the judge would announce her decision now, everything would fall into place, and she would leave the courtroom a rich young lady? Matthew barely listened to what the judge was reading to the room, and, first and foremost, to him and Anastasia. He only understood that after the divorce and property division, he would indeed be left with practically nothing. Veronica remained in speechless infantilism. She understood that this wasn't even a court decision. It was a verdict on all her hopes. Only one thought was pounding in Veronica's head now. No matter how things turn out, I won't get rid of the baby now. Even if Matthew has big problems, I can and will do everything myself for the future baby. She didn't voice her intentions aloud. Indeed, perhaps no one, seeing her pretty face and well-proportioned figure, would have thought she took the topic of motherhood so seriously. Sometimes what seems empty is only seemingly empty. Anastasia left the courtroom satisfied. She already knew that Matthew would be arrested tomorrow on charges of large-scale fraud. Did she feel sorry for him and Veronica? It was strange, but she did. Sarah wasn't a vengeful person. She just wanted justice. Even her heart had stopped hurting so much. She wanted to return to her design sketches, drown in flowers, forget herself, but no longer seek revenge. For a second it even seemed to her that the statue of Themis standing in the corner suddenly dropped the blindfold from her eyes and winked at her, approving her thoughts. And she also remembered Victor Davy's favourite phrase, "The law is harsh, but it is the law." Sarah and Ellie sat in the garden, sipping red wine and chatting. On the lawn nearby, the grown-up grandchildren were bustling in the grass. Ellie, as usual, grumbled, "Sally, I understand, of course, that your dacha by the sea is huge and you're bored there alone. I approve of you taking the grandchildren here for the whole summer, but why are you also dragging Veronica's daughter to visit you? That's starting to smell of absurdity." Sarah raised her eyes to her friend, squinted, adjusted the cloth band on her head. "Ellie, Veronica is now a mother and a wife to Matthew. She travels to visit him in prison, sends packages, brings parcels. I never thought all this would surprise me so much. It won't diminish me. The sons and their families live in complete prosperity. What more could you wish for, Ellie, from this life? Everything turned out as it did. It's just a shame that Matthew decided to show his character. He was rude, insolent to the authorities in the colony, to miss the chance for early release. Sometimes I think I didn't know my husband well. I was always flying under creative clouds, and he was treading on sinful earth. Veronica managed to see something else in him, to recognize something other than a duck. Look, she bore him a child. She's studying part-time at the Institute, will get her diploma soon, and will wait for Matthew's return. I'm sure of it. Ellie chuckled conspiratorially. Well, friend, the court is clear. All right, I won't tease you and ask what gentleman was circling the fence here yesterday. It seems to me that's your new close friend. I approve 100%, a very imposing man, and, as his outfit suggested to me, also one of us, from the creative types. Sarah immediately threw a peach pit at her curious friend. My life here has begun to acquire a new meaning. I don't want to scare it away, so I'm not telling you yet. I promise you'll be the first to wish me luck with the new man. Let happiness settle near me again.